Y bienvenidos un día más a Cult of Nagas. Hoy tenemos con nosotros pues las novedades de la Adepticon. Son las 4 de la mañana y aquí estamos dando el callo. A ver si no se retrasan demasiado porque te quedan todavía 9 minutos para que esto comience. Hay un huevazo de hype en el chat. La gente pide ratas, ratas y más ratas. Y bueno, aquí andamos. Poco a poco y en ello. Con la inmortalidad es una maldición. Sí, están como locos. Ratas, ratas. ¿Dónde están las ratas? Uno pide el Sanguinor. Nada, 5.000 personas están conectados a esto. De locos. Está de locos esto. Buenas, Tolk. ¿Qué tal? La ruina. Ya te digo yo. Voy a añadir pista de audio porque no se estaba escuchando el directo. Menos mal que me ha conectado un poquito antes. en el cónclave. Efectivamente, si Games Workshop no cumple, el filtrador sacará las imágenes que faltan. Siempre es un win-win, eso está claro. Está clarísimo. De todas maneras, Twitch se la sopla todo. O sea, en serio, un día que no esté en directo os lo explico por qué se la sopla todo. Le da igual, tú puedes poner lo que quieras y hacer lo que te dé la gana prácticamente. De hecho, el nuevo meta es poner a una chica con un gameplay, ¿vale? De una parte de su cuerpo, ya sea el trasero, ya sea... Ahora es el nuevo meta de Twitch, ¿vale? Como si fuera una especie de croma. Me llama mucho la atención, la verdad. Un día me va a tocar hacer eso. ¿No andáis por Discord? Vamos a ver qué os dicen por Discord. Ah, mira, JV suelta un Kurnoti de vez en cuando por el chat. Pero no, a ver, es que es lo que decía la peña, ¿no? O sea, es lo que hay. Las ratas son de la workshop y es de los ejércitos más esperados, o sea que... El culo de Ángel, sí, pues puede ser, ¿por qué no? Buenas, Splinterbeck, ¿qué tal lo llevamos? Hoy solo estoy yo, ya lo siento, pero es lo que toca. Igual las 4 de la mañana pues es un poco intempestivo para hacer directos. Pero bueno, parece ser que a la workshop pues le gusta. Que además es curioso, porque en Inglaterra son las 3 de la mañana, entonces, no sé. Deberían de mirar por ellos mismos, pero todo lo ponen para América y ya está. Hombre, claro, por supuesto. Cuanto mejores miniaturas le saquen a las ratas, mejor para mi bolsillo. Y peor para el de la peña, es inversamente proporcional, está claro. Madre mía. Venga a sacar iconos de ratas. Y venga a tirar en los dineros a la workshop. Ah, mira, alguien está pidiendo el gato de Osiar Pone Reapers. También puede ser. No te diría yo que no. Sí, la verdad es que sí. Merece la pena. O sea, se lo merece ya, hombre. O sea, hay que... Yo lo digo muchas veces. Hay que tener valor para... Unas miniaturas tan caras, pues... Coleccionarlas tan antiguas. Un carnicero ogro. Pero, ¿para qué? No entiendo. Bueno. Yo hace poco me he hecho un sándwich y me he tomado la medicina porque llevo un par de días algo pachucho. Y de hecho no debería de... Se viene, empieza... Chan, chan, chan. Bueno, y empiezan por Storkas, loco. Buah.
Hello and welcome to the Adepticon Preview Show 2024. My name's Lewis and I'll be your host for this brand new show, bringing you all the latest releases from the Warhammer universe. We've got announcements from Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40,000, Warcry, Warhammer Underworlds, Warhammer the Old World, Kill Team and loads more. There's certainly something for everyone, and with that in mind, we've called in our top team of Warhammer presenters to talk to the fabulous people at the
Parece
studios
programa
to give you
largo,
the lowdown
chicos.
on what's on the
Ya
way
os lo voy
for your
avisando.
favourite games systems. And boy, have they been busy. So, without further ado, let's get started with our first reveal.
Pues la primera revelación... ¿Qué es eso? Parece caos. ¿Qué es eso? Bah, 40k. Dread Talons. Bueno, pues sí, lo dicho. Caos, caos y más caos. Estaba diciendo que iba a sacar capturas y aquí estoy sin sacar ninguna. Pero me imagino que de 40k nos interesará mucho, que digamos, ¿no? ¿A alguien le interesa del chat? Pues si no, ni las saco, las capturas del caos.
Let the galaxies burn! It looks like the Chaos Space Marines are back, and the long war is going to be fought with renewed vigor with the return of the Chaos Space Marines. Now, thanks for joining us.
Dice que vuelven los Space Marines del caos. Dos señores del caos con retroreactores, vaya. Los Raptors, vaya. Si en teoría le tendría que tener cariño al tío de las orejas de soplillo. Es lo más parecido a un Skaven. Uno con mochila y otro con armadura de exterminador. Efectivamente, Andrés. Yo es que a mí el caos nunca me ha llamado mucho la atención. Son marines, pero con armadura barroca súper sobrecargada. Entonces, pues bueno, ahí están. Yo tengo custodes, que no tienen nada que ver estéticamente con esta gente, así que... Sí. Yo les llamo hemomarines, o marines aún más intensitos que nunca. Aunque me funen, chicos, es lo que hay. Los marines, pues bueno, como todo el mundo los juega, pues terminas cogiéndoles cierta manía. Dice que puedes jugar con ellos Legión Alfa. Sí, gente más móvil y más infiltradora. Muchas gracias por suscribirte, JV. Se agradece.
There's also others, as Josh said, that kind of lean into a particular style that we associate with some of the legions. So there's a kind of a sneaky, kind of alpha legion-y kind of one. There's another one that enables you to play kind of tanks and siege engines, which has got a bit of an Iron Warriors vibe. But if you want to play a Night Lord siege force, knock yourself out.
Any word bearers in that book, guys?
There are word bearers in that book.
Had to be someone in there.
There are, yeah.
You always sneak in there.
Bueno, por lo típico que dicen. Abson, Amazing, muy bonitos, muy monos y sirven para hacerte otras legiones más móviles, como la Legión Alfa o de infiltradores. Dame Sigmar, baby, por favor.
So that they'll still be enjoying that ability as they go further.
We really wanted to make sure that the whole Chaos Space Marine army has.
Sí que es verdad que aburren a las piedras,
You know, fundamentally, they're all like big dudes in power armor, right? So how do we make those things feel differently? Really leaning in from the Chaos.
Ahora Kill Team. Bueno.
Powered by the Dark Gods, they make those pacts, both from a rules.
Pues igual tenía que haber pinchado el directo media hora más tarde.
Space Marines that have gone evil. They're kind of corrupted by the war, confused with the dark powers. So we really want to do that. across everything, the artwork, the rules, the background sections.
El príncipe demonio
Capture the
está chulo.
glory of chaos.
That's brilliant.
Fantastic.
Claro, eso es, que vean a lo que importa.
So going back to the two battle forces we've got, so
Ya sabemos que hacen marines y hacen marines muy bien.
close combat, I think it's fair to say. So tell me about that set.
That one would be perfect for you, Si. It's really close combat focused. You've got the new Jump Pack Lord with his Raptor Bodyguard. You've also got the Demon Prince in there. You can build that as a Wing Demon Print. So again, super fast, super fighty. And then the rest of that box is rounded
Sí, que el príncipe demonio es súper rápido y súper luchador. Cultistas, raptors.
You're on rushing charge. So yeah, great box for
I
you.
like an expendable core for my army. That's exactly.
So I think I'm a bit more tactical. So the Veterans of the Long War box would appeal more to me. It's more of an archetypal Chaos Space Marine force, right? Yeah, so that one you have your Chaos War on foot, and then you've got the Legionaries in there, which he can join, or he can join his Chosen as his elite bodyguard. And then you've got that anviled hammer unit with the Terminators to control the board. They're not quite as fast, so you're probably going to have to spend a little bit of time getting there.
Ahora hablan de los exterminadores, que pueden ser yunque y martillo para dominar el centro de la mesa, bla, 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 aburro a una piedra. Por favor.
Yeah, and they complement each other as well. So, why not get both?
So there we go. We've got two exciting new battle forces coming up very shortly for you guys.
Ah, mira, anuncian 2 nuevas Battle Force.
Thank you so much.
What a way to start, and that's not the only thing from the 41st millennium we've got to show you. So don't go anywhere, 40k fans, there's plenty more where that came from. Next up, we're traveling deep within the mortal realms.
Ahora los reinos mortales que se van. O sea que eso de Kill Team, patata. Aquí sí que hacemos unas capturillas de pantalla, unos recortecillos, que no.
So there we go. Warcry, Briar and Bone is on the way real soon. You can almost smell it on the air.
Sí, son bonitos, la verdad. Pero en un principio no veía muy bien lo que eran.
Okay, so very exciting box set. We've got brand new bespoke warbands.
La caja de Warcry que cae. Bueno.
Which is a giant creature. It's really cool. It's a really nasty, horrible piece of terrain, which we'll get to in a little bit.
A ver, Andrés, es que
Bit of an oddball one for the Ossiarch Bone Reapers.
se hace unas porras que flipas.
So the thing is, the Ossiarch Bone Reapers is very little goes to waste. Okay, everything is built.
¿Pueden ponerme la foto?
Okay, so each of the creatures.
O esta vez no van a hacer eso.
In addition to the centroid in charge, are creatures who are being punished by the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, some kind of perceived failure. So we all know that the Ossiarch Bone Reapers never.
Sí, creo que fue Andrés el que me hizo el dibujo del Crut agarrando una granada y al final resulta que salió. La foto que tengo de Avatar, que fue increíble esa porra que dije.
Okay, so these creatures get sent out into the very outer wilds of the various different mortal realms. And in this instance, this particular warband has ended up in the Norwood because no one really wants to go in there.
Sí, son muy bonitos los Osiarcas, Lo que pasa que es un ejército que no colecciono y ya está, no hay más. Sí, son muy guapos. Pasa que con tanto látigo, tío, digo, ¿qué son? Son elfos del mar, digo, joder, ya sé que es muy pronto por la mañana, pero no sé. Es por la luz, supongo. Bueno, pues es un señor, es un centauro con un látigo. Muy bien, muy chulo, ¿eh? Muy chulo. Pues me voy a Discord. Os lo dejo por aquí. No es el centauro que esperabas, pero es el centauro que necesitabas. Jaja, y también os leo por el Discord,
pretty decent fighters overall. The other fighters in the warband, the bone beasts and the harpies, they're not quite so powerful, but obviously they make up for that by just sheer mobility and being able to support your other fighters in their attacks.
And we've got a Sylvaneth warband in the box as well, twist wheel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ah, dice que también hay una banda de Sylvanet.
Their background is that each and every one of them is infected. Okay, they are not regular Sylvaneth at all. They've got a horrible infection which is corrupting them from the inside out. One of the reasons they're called the twist wheel is because
Ah, mira. Son elfos del mar corruptos.
the strains are very different, so they don't quite interact with them the same way. And what they're doing is they're trying to get back to Alariel in order to be cured. So the Swarm Sage in particular has dedicated themselves to trying to cure the twist wheel of their corruption and obviously expose themselves.
Dicen que tratan de curar la corrupción y por eso se exponen a ella con sus cuerpos. Y por eso mutan de esta manera. Curioso. Curioso.
The corruption and literally tear it out of their flesh, and it hurts. It's rubbish, but there's power in that because once the corruption is torn out of you, you become more energized. The warband itself functions around the leader, dealing damage.
Mira el líder, qué guapo tú.
Oh, great.
And they can heal themselves as well, because naturally, healing is a huge part of the Sylvaneth fiction. But the actual playstyle of the warband.
Si tuviera dinero, ¿cómo le tiraba la cara a esto?
But at the same time, you need to manage your fighters who are quite fragile, very, very careful.
Tengo una cartera por aquí. No.
Is it more difficult than it sounds, or is it about as difficult as it sounds?
It's not terribly difficult.
Guapísimo, guapísimo, guapísimo. Como siempre ya te digo, tenéis las imágenes en el Discord por si las queréis ver otra vez.
I've got my fighting stats just like a regular game of Warcry, and where I go from there is I've got to decide who gets damaged when by the abilities I've got, and then obviously you can heal up as well. Okay, and then the quad is pretty beefy as well. It can do a lot of damage. I think probably one of the most interesting things for this warband are the variety of different fighters. So you've got some corrupted dryads in there, which are regular dryads, but again they've got the horrible corruption. It's actually a lot stronger and a lot tougher than a regular dryad. And you've also got some tree revenants in there as well with a variety of weapons you've not seen before. So there's a tree revenant there with quite a large bow, and they've got a very interesting profile.
Qué guapos, tío.
Because it's damage done in a very, very different way.
¿Cómo se lo han sacado? Buah. Absurdísimo. Es que es absurdísimo. No tiene ningún tipo de sentido. Sí, sí, hay 3 diadres, sí. Por lo que puedo ver.
Now, John, this box also comes with what must be my favourite terrain for a long time, the Ravening Narmor. Tell me all about it.
Well, you've chosen a good one to be your favourite. It's one of the more creepy pieces I've seen so far. So the Ravening Narmor is a terrifying piece of kit. So it's like any other Narloke. It's a giant flesh.
Sí, son Idonet, que se han maldecido con la maldición esta de las dríades que explicabais en el culto. No me acuerdo cómo se llamaba la maldición, esta que decíais. No, no hay esceno, JV. O por lo menos no la han sacado. Y mira qué raro, porque en Warcraft siempre sacan esceno. El tocón de árbol. Sí, supongo que ahora lo enseñarán.
It kind of turns into one of these things. It's one of the many different creatures this thing can spawn out of. Because obviously the magic in the realm can twist things and all kinds of horrible magic.
La magia de los reinos dice que pueden transformar a la gente. Y estos están transformados por el reino de la vida.
But yeah, people will drag it up onto that bamboo platform, chuck people into the maw, kick people, and then you can do that during the game as well, which is obviously tons of fun. You've got to be really careful if you're standing up. But you know, it provides a bit of interesting. It provides players an interesting question when they're playing the game. That okay, so it's a platform, it's high up, it's a vantage point, it's quite a useful place to be. And if there's an objective up there, there's a treasure trove or something, you really want to go up there. You got to be quite careful. You don't just move up there, pick up the treasure, and then end your turn, because otherwise, you know, in comes the clothesline.
Sí, hablan demasiado y encima no dicen nada relevante ni de las reglas ni de simplemente dicen Amazing Amazon. Mira, esto es Underworlds. Que sacan más zombies. Pues nada. Claro, o sea, cultistas, dice.
So there we go, the new Warhammer Underworlds box is just over the horizon. My name's Nick, and I've got John with me from the Warhammer Studio to talk all about it. John, good to have you here, man.
Thank you very much.
What is Wintermoor? Tell me.
So Wintermoor is the next evolution in the story of Deathgorge. So Deathgorge was a large ravine, and now what happened is we've gone beneath that again to even deeper underworlds.
It's even colder down
under
there.
the underworlds. Yeah, it's absolutely awful down there. No one's having any fun. It is a miserable, horrible, cold, frigid place to be. There are horrible giant worms trying to eat you alive. There are horrible parasites crawling in the dark trying to eat brain and drink your soul.
Túneles pasadizos, beber almas, dicen. Cosas de trasfondo de Underworlds que como no estoy muy enterado, pues nada. Buah, a mí nada. No me está gustando nada a mí tampoco la presentación sin imágenes de fondo. Se les ve a ellos. ¿Y a mí qué me importa a ellos? A mí lo que me importa son las minis. Pero bueno. Loads of different play styles, loads of cool new mechanics to engage with. And if you're brand new to the game, again, it's absolutely perfect. You've got everything in there you need to play the game. You've got your rulebook, you've got warbands, you can play against somebody else. They don't even need to get their own box set. You can just play que sí, que otra caja básica de 100 pavos. O menos, no sé, ya no sé ni lo que valen. Claro, de normal te ponen las fotos de las minis como si fuera un PDF fija y estática. Y ahora lo único que están poniendo son trozos de vídeo. Pero bueno, yo qué sé, la vida.
We'll start with a slightly more delusional one.
Slightly more delusional ones. All right, so we'll go for the Flesher Courts. So this particular warband, their whole shtick is walking up to enemy fighters and whacking lumps off them with their massive cleavers and chains and hooks and the rest, and preparing the meat in the perfect way to serve their lord. And they're broadly speaking an aggro.
Pero que cómo van a ser de cities y que son zombies y necrófagos, loco.
And shanking you with all the horrible rusty cleavers and spikes that they've got attached to themselves. And the way this warband
Ah, ya las veo. Hostia. Vale.
As soon as you kill a ghoul, 3 more to replace them. However, these are all, you know, very, very highly trained chefs, right? They're the absolute peak of their art. So they're not very easy to replace. And as a result, you only get what you start with.
So they sound absolutely disgusting, but on the other side of the board, we've got the Brethren of the Bolt.
Correct.
Who are these guys?
Okay, so the Brethren of the Bolt are
Perdón, chicos.
Sigmar faction, broadly speaking, they're all human. Mileage may vary.
Amigo, aquí están.
They are effectively the worshippers of Sigmar. They're
Sí,
the crazy flagellants.
efectivamente, son igual de feos, solo que unos están vivos y otros no. Joder, por eso los estaba confundiendo con un nigromante y... Madre mía, no se puede ser más grimdark, ¿eh? Bueno, JV, en mi caso es como cuando ligabas, punto. Da igual que fuera a las 6 de la mañana que 6 de la tarde. Están haciendo un concurso de a ver quién es más intensito, si los zombies o los fanáticos de Sigmar.
As the opponent, you really got to play around very carefully. But effectively, when you tase an enemy through one of your friends, they inspire again and they get charged up, which is great. They're a lot of fun to play. They're quite hilarious. Some of the cards
Bueno, pues no estoy sacando ninguna imagen, como no las dejan estáticas.
Doesn't just come with those warbands, it also comes with 2 rivals decks that anyone can use for any warband. Tell us about those.
Absolutely. So yeah, so again, really good intent to get the box set.
¿Qué dice Jopefo?
And of course, when you're playing them, you can swap them around as much as you like. So we'll start with Rhymeworm's Bite, which is
Ah, sí, que esa banda de ciudadanos se le va a atragantar a más de uno.
These
Claro.
horrible giant worms just come plowing through the board and just devour everything in their path. And what the deck allows you to do is not
¿Y esto?
necessarily manipulate them,
Que van a sacar un
but
gusano.
effectively get out of the way first.
Now there's a second
Un gusano
deck
gigante.
as well called the Hungering Parasite deck, which is really unique, isn't it? How's it work?
Okay, so the Hungering Parasite is a tiny little fragment of the Gobby Stractor, this horrible big amorphous glob.
Sí, un miriápodo raro. Efectivamente, Andrés, es un
This tiny little
miriápodo.
fragment is frozen off and broken. It's this tiny little bit of a Gobby that's scuttling around. And effectively it's just this
Y pregunta de Samen, Andrés. ¿Los 100 pies son miriápodos?
the deck is designed towards. It's a really control style deck. You've got to manipulate the position of either the fighter with the parasite, be it yours or your opponent's, or you've got to kill people with the parasite, or you've got to make sure the parasite's in the right place at the right time. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds it.
Because obviously your fighter's uninspired, so they're just not good. They're probably never going to get much better throughout the course of the game. But in addition to that, at the end of a round,
Ay, lo que cascan.
Okay, so if there's enemies nearby, they all get staggered, which is great. And if there's no enemies nearby, then
Así me gusta, Andrés.
we should eventually.
No lo habrás mirado la Wikipedia.
Talk to us about Warhammer Underworld once more. It's been great to look through the box sets, but keep with us, guys. There's more coming up soon.
Some fantastic releases there, and that's not the only announcement we'll have for Warhammer Age of Sigmar during the show.
Ahora viene Sigmar, gente.
Right, well, more on that.
Se viene Sigmar. Aplaudid un poquito. Aplaudid un poquito. Wowers. Warhammer Age of Sigmar se viene. El caos, no, otra vez, no, tío. Uf, qué pereza. Pues muy bien, pues la dama de la ruina. Pues muy bien. Pues para vosotros la dama de la ruina.
Oh, wow, what a miniature Abraxia, Spear of the Everchosen. We are joined here by Matt and Phil.
Qué pereza.
Pleasure to have you with us to talk about this great new miniature.
¿Dónde están mis estorcas? ¿Dónde están las ratas?
She is none other than the right-hand woman of Archangel. This woman is in control of the Varangard. That is no small feat because, of course, every member of the Varangard is a Chaos Lord or above, and so she is essentially
Otro monstruo más.
She's been tasked with striking
Otro
into Diana
más.
and snuffing out the flames of hope that Sigmar has established there. Now she has a spear, or Bolgo, which is like essentially a mutating spear. Anything touched by that will turn into an awful chaos spawn. It will also mutate her unless she keeps the reins, unless she keeps her concentration. And the one time she had a lapse of concentration, pawns grew out of her head. It's essentially a test. It's a test from Archaon, that spear.
Sí, a ver, la mini es bonita, pero es que es eso, tío. O sea, no estoy buscando esto yo.
This great scaly beast, she hits like a ton of bricks, and behind her come the sword.
Mi enhorabuena a los jugadores del caos, eso sí.
So the inner core of the Varangard, aren't they? Sort of
Absolutely, yeah. And we see her essentially cutting a red swathe through Gyran. It doesn't go all her way. She unfortunately contracts something rather nasty in the process from the flesh eater curse and starts to get the delusion of the flesh eaters.
Bueno, Andrés, habrá que verla en la mano.
Conquering a certain place, but no spoilers. You have to wait and see.
Hombre, es un monstruo. A ver,
Minus spoilers.
es otro monstruo más de todos los que han sacado mogollón de monstruos en esta edición.
From the get-go, we see a character that is really having to keep the balance and hang on like for dear life, and you know whether she makes it through, whether she has the willpower and the skill, you'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, quite overpriced of power.
Yeah. Well, it's Archaon's world, so this is the big leagues, and she, you know, as you can see when you see her on the battlefield as well.
So speaking of which, she comes as part of Abraxia's Varan Spear, so it's her and 3 Varangard. That sounds devastating. How does she play on the battlefield?
Yeah, so
Dice que lo va a poner con 3 Varangard y esta señora. O sea que igual vale como un kilotón de puntos, ¿eh? Ya os lo voy diciendo.
command synergy with Varangard. So really cool seeing that. As Phil talked about, her kind of mutating spear that can have
Bueno, pues nada.
can power up,
9 ballestones y para casa que se va.
do damage and mutate nearby enemies. But it's really the synergy with the Varangard where you're really getting that big value. You can also take Abraxia with Battle Line Varangard in her Army of Renown featured in the book. And that gives
Ah, mira, un ejército de renombre en la cual la Varangard va a ser Battle Line
play
con este señor.
an army that is one of the most
Bueno.
elite armies, if not the most elite armies. in all of Age of Sigmar, you know, really.
Sí, no, sinergia no, es que ha dicho que un ejército de renombre van a hacer.
Get painted straight away.
You probably expect nothing less from Archeon, definitely.
Yeah.
Pues nada, a lo loco.
Matt, Phil, if you don't mind hanging around, we've got more with you very shortly. So hang around, folks. We've got more to come.
So over the course of the Dawnbringer story arc, we've seen
Dawnbringer
two crusades,
6.
twin-tailed crusade we call it, head out from Hammerhal Aksha, and Hammerhal Gyren, and they have had so many trials and tribulations. over the
Hammerhal
course of the story
Axa
arc.
y Hammerhal Giran, dice.
Moments of triumph and moments of real tragedy.
Pues genial, que tengamos el tocón. Genial.
What we've seen in Hammerhal Aksha is the crusade heading out eastwards. They think they've found somewhere there that is viable, that they can defend, which is the ruins of an old city called Embergrove. And it's kind of like a haunted place, really, and they had a lot of
That's
trouble
chulo.
with nasties in the basement, the night haunt that dwelt there, but they have now managed to claim that space, and Zenestra and the Cult of the Wheel have taken that place with conviction and faith. Now in Gyran, we've seen them thrash their way through jungles and forests, scabrous sprawl, swamplands, mangroves. They've basically had
Ahí
a
está,
horrible time of it,
el tocón.
trying to get up north to found their own city called Verdigris. Verdigris is looking like maybe that's going to work out, but we'll see what happens over the course of Dawnbringer 6. Abraxia, the Spear of the Everchosen, she is the right-hand woman of Archaon himself, the Supreme Grand Marshal of Chaos, and she's part of the Varangard. The Varangard are like elite Chaos Lords. Every one of them is sort of Chaos Lord power. She's fought her way up from the fighting pits of the Varanspire. Ever since she was a child, she's been really good with a spear, and she has no morals at all about who she kills and when she kills them. So she is a real fearsome character.
Pues me da que ni estorcas ni pichas en vinagre.
Fully trust her and actually wants to test her.
Me da a mí.
He's given her the spear called Bolga, this magic spear, and although it mutates everything it touches, so all you need to do is
Mira, dice que la lanza muta a todo el que toca.
also do that to the wielder if the wielder loses their concentration. That did happen once in Abraxia's history, and that's why she has those horns. Is it only took a momentary lapse of her concentration, and she started to mutate. So with that spear, Archaon is testing Abraxia, provided she stays in control. As long as she does, things are
Dice que Archaon está poniendo a prueba a Abraxia
right at the top end.
con esta lanza, a ver si es capaz de controlarla.
Right at the bottom there, we have tribesmen.
Sí, cada presentación es peor, obviamente.
Wilderness and the Dark Oath exemplify that. They make bargains with the Dark Powers to try and survive, and Gunnar Brand and his family are a great example of that. So Gunnar Brand himself is not just a big fighter, he's very powerful in combat, but he's also kind of the brains of the operation. He's a very clever dude, and he doesn't really want to see his family slide into chaos. Neither does he want to particularly kowtow to Sigmar. He, like all Dark Oath, he's got a massive chip on his shoulder about the fact that Sigmar basically bailed on them, and they had to resort to these dark methods to survive. He's got his daughter Singri with him, a sort of expert horse archer. Tanari Takblood is his rival, the War Queen. Now, unfortunately, it's not that simple if you're enthralled to chaos. He starts getting involved in the Archaon's grand plan and the pawns that are moving around the board. There's some hidden forces that are lurking in the shadows that are also effectively using the Dark Oath as pawns. So running parallel to this story, we also see some old friends, Vandus
Storcast.
the mighty Lord of Khorne, his nemesis. Now, these are characters we brought into play at the beginning of the Realmgate Wars, many years ago, 8-9 years ago now. It's gone from
Muy bien.
essentially a small vendor.
Ahí sigue estando Bandus con su mini ultra antigua.
All he wants is to get his revenge on Kull. Kull killed his sons in a former life, way back when he was mortal, and he is definitely obsessing about it now. It's kind of bringing things off kilter and actually maybe splitting the
Nada, ahí no se ve nada nuevo.
the people should be united in the face of chaos to pursue his own agenda. Now, Korgos Kull, all he needs to turn into a demon prince is that last sculpt to tap his pyramids to, the real capstone to what he's been working on all these years. And so he has his own agenda, and it doesn't go the way you think it might. So I'm looking forward to people seeing how that story, that ancient rivalry, actually ends in Dawnbringers. So Dawnbringers is not only ending an era, the era of the beast, where we've seen destruction in the driving seat. We see that come to an end in Dawnbringers, but we also see the beginning of a new era. And there are signs for those who are paying attention of what that might be and where that might lead. On a personal level as well. So Vandus is a good example of that. He is not his former self, and his journey, he's almost exemplary of what the Stormcast have to deal with as they die and are reforged and die and are reforged, and their souls pay the price over time. So,
dice que Bandus va a llegar a un momento en que va a pagar el precio de tanto reforjarse, ¿vale? Entonces, igual sacan una nueva miniatura de Bandus para cuarta.
And it's been done in secret, it's behind the scenes, because the people orchestrating that story, and I'm talking gods here, and demigods, are not keen on showing their hand until the last minute. And it ends with this great climactic explosion of violence. Of course it does, it's Warhammer, and the Mortal Realms will never be the same again.
Lo de la escenografía no te fíes, Rude Lucas.
So you've seen the Twin-Tailed Crusade set off from Hammerhall Aksha and Hammerhall Gyra. They faced an awful lot of trouble getting to where they are.
That's fair.
Can you sort of summarise what the Dawnbringer story has brought us so far?
Yeah, so we've seen two crusades, and by crusades, these are definitely the largest that the Sigmarite cities have put out yet. Statement of intent, really. Sigmar have to put this flag in the sand and say, everything's going fine, by the way, and we're definitely founding these cities for morale propaganda thing than anything else. But unfortunately, as is the way of Warhammer and the way of the Mortal Realms, it has not gone smoothly. We know that one city will rise and one city will fall, and that leads us into some new characters and some new adventures.
Nada, está diciendo que una nueva ciudad resurge con la cruzada y una nueva ciudad cae, ¿vale? O sea, conquistan y pierden, conquistan y pierden.
Archaon's seat of power, and she was born there, she grew up there, and she has had a very bloody history from day one, from being an infant really, all the way up to her current incarnation. She's had to strive to overcome all the Chaos tyrants and rivals and would-be kings, and she's risen to the top. She really is that good, to the point that Archaon is testing her, essentially, and testing her as a general by giving her the most powerful...
Nada, tiene pinta de esto de ser el plato fuerte, chicos. No sé yo si ratas o Skaven van a salir. Cada vez estoy perdiendo más la esperanza.
Obviously, the forces of order have by no means overtaken the lands or conquered what they lost. Chaos is still very much in the driving seat in Age of Sigmar. The forces of Sigmar, the God King,
Madre mía. Ahí está Bandus. No sé la de veces que han sacado Bandus.
So every time Sigmar tries to set something up, there's a Chaos force nearby waiting to knock it down. And we've seen various incarnations of that over the years. But this is a real precision strike. This is Archaon sending out his brightest and his best.
Yo tengo pintado Bandus, chicos. Voy a por él. Venga, va. Voy a por Bandus, que le tengo por ahí.
So you've mentioned that the forces of chaos have been knocking down everything that the forces of order have attempted to build. Now, in this book, there's mention of the Nexus Chaotica. Can you give us a little bit of information about what that is? Because I think that's relevant to this.
I love that thing. It's just so metal. Essentially, this is a kind of like a power siphon, a chaos engine, really. And where they place these things, much like the Dawnbringers are trying to put their Nexus siphons and their aquiliths and essentially drain the land of the magical force or employ the magical inherent force of the realms. The Chaos version is corrupting and twisting and bleeding the realms dry, and that's what we see in this form. So any wizard, any sorcerer, chaos sorcerer near that can draw on the Nexus Chaotica. It's like another sign that chaos is striking back.
That was fantastic. There's a lot to look forward to there. Thank you very much for joining.
Mira, Workshop, yo también tengo a Bandus, Hammerhand, Mira, ¿A que está chulo mi Bandus? Tugu. Hala. Me marca aún la Workshop. ¿Qué es esto? Un planeta. El Mechanicum oscuro. La gente se vuelve loquísima. Efectivamente.
I may be no lore master, but I'm pretty sure I could put 2 and 2 together based on what we've just seen. That should be 1 and 0 because it's binary.
Indeed, there were some fantastic clues there, including one big red one.
Yeah, and of course, if you reckon you know what it is yourself, why not join us on social media and tell us what you reckon it is?
Head over to Warhammer Community for all of the details, and don't go anywhere. We've got some more fantastic reveals coming.
Creo porque es que además, si fueran graciosos, pero es que ni lo son, ni siquiera son graciosos. Ya, si os cuento un secreto, JV, me cuesta bastante vender miniaturas. Y eso va a jugar muy fuerte en mi contra con el tema de Storkas. Pero bueno, es lo que hay, sí. Coleccionismo. Lo puedo proxear para algo, supongo.
And championing the Slayers, we've also seen a brand new miniature that I imagine we'll dive into in a little bit.
We also saw some range there with the cannons, and just in that last shot there with the whole army, we saw the Anvil of Doom in the background.
Yes, yeah.
Buf, hace que no me he hecho una partida de rol, JV. ¿Quién es él? Para jugar partidas de rol tienes que hacer sesiones largas y la gente cada vez tiene menos tiempo y sobre todo menos ganas de comprometerse. Pero yo sí fui máster de rol. De Mundo de Tinieblas. Ahí está. De hecho tengo aquí el libro, el de Vampiro, la Mascarada. Perdón, chicos, es que estoy malísimo.
Bring now? What other ways can we play Dwarven Mountain Holds?
Well, as you say, you've got your very traditional sort of gun line that you've seen in previous editions. Lots of thunderers and artillery sort of being arrayed on a hill and blasting away at the foe as they come. But you've got sort of the more dwarven traditional approach of relying on good old.
Estoy viendo la media de edad de esta gente y me están haciendo sentir muy joven, pero súper joven. Creo que uno de ellos podría ser mi padre, de hecho.
Speaking of slightly older miniatures, I did notice a certain
Madre del Señor bendito.
We do have the return of Bugman's cart.
So obviously one of the things we saw was a beautiful army shot at the end there with everything ready to go. How would you go about starting a Dwarven Mountain Holds force? You know, what would you bring together as your core, and what might you add to that afterwards?
So the backbone, the core of any dwarf army is the warriors and the missile troops, be that handguns or quarrelers. Dwarves traditionally fight in shield walls, fighting with great weapons and their shields interlocked together, supported by dwarves carrying crossbows and handguns, and all of this supported with lots of artillery, from very traditional dwarf artillery pieces like the bolt throwers, the grudge throwers, more modern war machines such as cannons and flame cannons, and less honourable war machines such as the Goblin Hewer. All of this capped off and supported by airborne cavalry in the form of gyrocopters and gyro bombers. Some of these are quite new.
Eso parece, Rude Lucas.
Old traditional things that dwarves
Eso parece.
rely on.
The core box, that dwarf warrior box. How flexible is that? Because I remember in the past that you could build it with hand weapons, great weapons. So how does that feature into the new army?
Oh, it's a very flexible kit, as it always was.
Ese señor, yo creo que podría ser mi padre. Tendrá unos 100 años, más o menos.
Dwarf handguns or crossbows. So again, very, very diverse kits that can be used to make warriors in different types. Also can be used to make rangers, can be used to make missile troops. Lots and lots of
Es ese señor.
So these are the dual kits that are returning. The hammerers and longbeards, and the iron breakers and iron drakes.
Yeah, these are the kits that represent the more elite parts of your army. The hammerers being the thanes and the king's personal bodyguard. The longbeards being the older, more seasoned dwarfs who grumble their way through a battle but are not very afraid of anything. The solid backbone of the army, the dwarfs who the young beardlings look to for leadership and inspiration.
You know, when protecting a king, we can't not mention that gorgeous new miniature. We've got a king on 3 dwarven warriors on a big old shield being carried around.
Bueno, pues ha salido... ¿Cómo se llamaba? El del escudo que llevaban en Asterix y Obelix. ¿Cómo se llamaba? Ya no me acuerdo. Vercingetorix, ¿podría ser? Pues ese ha salido. Voy a mirar a ver.
With a hand weapon and shield being borne aloft, and a thane on foot with a great weapon, or vice versa. You can change the components up and build it in a couple of different ways.
So obviously the setting of the old world is several hundred years before the reign of Karl Franz. Are there any returning characters we might expect? As dwarves are quite a long-lived race, so I can imagine there might be some people or names that we can recognize.
No se llamaba así, Vercingetorix, el que estaba subido en el escudo de Asterix y Obelix. Una pena. Hubiera estado guay pincharlo, pero no me acuerdo cómo se llamaba. Vercingetorix. Maldita la peña. Y su sensual humor. Me va a reír muy fuerte. Que me van a echar de casa. Hombre, normal. A ver.
For those of you watching at home, there's some fantastic reveals coming up, so don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. Enjoying yourself? Good. Don't forget, you can let us know which releases you're most excited about by hitting us up on any of our socials. And you can remind yourself of all the releases you've seen after the show over on the Warhammer Community website too.
Es terrible, sí, este nuevo formato. O sea, es terrible de ver y de todo. Y otra transición. Pues muy pioneros y muy botán. Pues voy a buscar los personajes de Asterix y Obelix, Abraracurcix, tío. Se llamaba Abraracurcix, el del escudo. Este es Abraracurcix. Nueva miniatura de Workshop. Ya. Yo tengo 2 bandas de Kill Team. Tengo los piratas, los piratuelos. ¿Y qué más tengo? Ah, y necrones también tengo. Y bueno, custodes, que son 4 minis. Pues este es el que ha salido, el enano. Habrá Kurthix.
So the Jaegers find themselves crash-landed and massively outnumbered by the Genestealer cult. So the Genestealer cult deployed their Brood Brother kill team to make an example of these interlopers.
So in terms of the Leagues of Votan, the Hernkin, we've only seen them as the pioneers riding around on their cool magic.
Etiqueta a cada uno del canal como un personaje de Asterix y Obelix. El problema es que mucha gente no me queda con su cara. Entonces, el día que os conozca en persona, pues ya os pongo a Asterix, Obelix, Panoramis, todos esos. Pero vamos, ya os voy diciendo que Alex es Panoramix. Obelix seguramente sea yo, el más gordo. Perdón, el más fuerte de huesos, ¿eh? Me le quedo yo.
For extended periods on their own with very little support or reinforcement. So when the rest of their kin arrive, they're effectively mopping up all the great work that all the Jaegers have done. Whilst they take it easy back on the ship, I suppose. But yeah, they're really self-sufficient and conduct sort of guerrilla warfare type battles. That's their purpose. In the game, they have a lot of unique rules. It's a sort of a hybrid between extremely elite and more numerous.
Aquí los tenéis. Esta fue uno de los cómics de mi infancia.
They've set their traps and their positions early, ready to ambush people, and so they have some funky ways of doing that.
Este no sé quién es. Será de las nuevas.
They also have a load of mines you can litter around the battlefield, so that you're really forcing your opponent to move specifically or otherwise take the damage from those mines, which is fun. And then they also have something quite unique called resourceful points.
Ah, mira, hay una serie de Netflix que van a sacar de Asterix y Obelix. Ah, mira, esta es la hija de Vercingetorix. Es la hija del jefe de la aldea. Ah, estos siguen a lo suyo. Claro, pero yo VHS no tengo, yo tenía los libros de esta gente. No, a ver, The Old World es un juego que es divertido, pero os lo digo siempre, es como el juego del 1. Hasta que la gente no aprenda a jugar bien, tiene mucha, o sea, te pueden hacer un montón de jujas y de trampas. El juego, cuanto más complejo sea, pues más se presta a eso, a que te hagan jujas y trampas. Pero bueno, ¿qué dicen estos locos? Nada, bla bla bla, bla bla bla, bla bla bla. That's when they're going to shine the best. So yeah, they're a really fun team.
So onto the Brood Brothers themselves. Now, they're quite a sub-faction of the Genestealer cults themselves. For those who don't know about it, would you like to explain more about what the Brood Brothers are?
Yeah, so the Brood Brothers are Astra Militarum Imperial Guard that have been brought onto the side of the Genestealer cult. They are normally waiting and hiding within loyalist regiments.
Ah, mira, JV, señor. La Nexus caótica que me has puesto aquí en el... Mira, mira. Lo ponemos también aquí. Está chulo, la escena. Pero vamos, así con lo que consiguen es que la gente no se quede a ver las previews. Porque vamos, vaya tostón, loco.
Turned to the side of the Genestealers, so they have tons of combat experience. They use lots of special weapons that the Imperial Guard use and things like that. And they are the bodyguard squad for the Brood Coven, so they protect the highest leaders of the Genestealer cult during, the dangerous points of a revolution.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, shall we deal with the four-armed elephant in the room?
Es que además ni siquiera en el fondo es de verdad. El fondo que han puesto para los comentaristas es un croma, tío. Es una imagen fija.
It's quite costly. It costs you numerous other options if you want to take them. So effectively, you're going to have a choice each game.
Madre mía.
Patriarch or one of the other ones, which we'll talk about later. Double activation. They can activate twice. Really fun. They can even mind control the opponent's options, which is to make them do actions, which is just really, really cool. So it's a lot of fun. A real all-star this team for sure. Yeah.
Wow. So we've got
Wow,
the,
amazing.
full-on dedicated psyker really, and the primus, who's the tactical mastermind of the Gene Stealer Cults. How do they work as well?
Magus is the spiritual leader of the cult, so you have a lot more support rules from that operative. It's also a very powerful psyker, so you've got some cool psychic unique actions to do.
Pues mi enhorabuena a los jugadores del caos, porque son las 5 menos 9 minutos. Y no sé, dudo mucho que haya más cosas, ¿eh? Ojalá me hagan saltar de la silla. Además, ¿para qué tanta gente? Es decir, tú cuando te traes invitados a un programa es porque tienen algo interesante que decir. Pero si no necesitas a tanta gente. Es que no hay quien lo entienda, no lo entiendo. O sea, no entiendo el sentido que tiene.
All the other terrain here is from the Killzone Beta Decima stuff that you can get separately. Then you've got both of the teams. There's quite a lot of models in here because we've added the Brood Coven as well. So in terms of models, it's one of the sort of heftiest model amounts that you get in a Kill Team box. You also then get card packs for each of the teams.
Sí, está pregrabado, efectivamente.
You've seen in Salvation for the Scouts and the Scorpions. And then also a book with all of your missions, your background, team rules in there as well. Token sheets for both the teams, so
¿Les habrán pagado por hacer esta presentación? ¿O entrará en nómina y por eso la han hecho así? Así como, bueno, tú mete ahí gente y que digan algo. ¿Qué es lo que parece? Eso es que es eso, o sea, el protagonista debería de ser las minis, y las minis están en pequeño y ellos están en grande. ¿Qué es esto? A ver. Ay, Necromunda. Ay, por favor. Ay, qué ganas de ir a la cama. Ay.
So that was our second teaser trailer. It looks like we're heading back to Necromunda. What did you think, Si?
It does indeed, yeah. Necromunda's a big place, of course, so it could be set anywhere. Who knows? Who knows? And of course, some shiny new miniatures by the look of it as well. If you reckon you know the answer to these questions, folks, make sure you join us on social media and let us know what you think.
Que ya sabemos que tenéis redes sociales. Si no las hacéis ni caso cada vez que os tiramos beef.
Even more fantastic announcements and even that teaser I promised as well. Who knew? Well, I reckon that's about it. Oh, I almost forgot. There is just one more thing to show you. Enjoy.
Hay una cosa más que enseñarnos. Disfruta. Venga. A ver, ¿qué? ¿Qué me vas a enseñar? ¡Hombre! Un Storkas. Podría haber estado aquí una hora más tarde. Mira, como sea una serie nueva, les mato.
Sigmar told us we were chosen. Warriors stolen from death.
Hasta luego, Nagas. Te quedas sin el alma. Ja, ja, ja.
The immortal sons and daughters of the Storm God.
Además tiene el mismo corte de pelo que la de la cámara de los de la sacrosanta. Pues ahí están las ratas reforjadas. Falta que salga Undertaker. No. Pero hubiera estado bien que hubiera salido ahí la Undertaker, ¿eh? Pues muy bien. De cámara de la ruina, nada, chavalotes. Todo esto son armaduras de las viejas.
Sigmar lied. He never told us the true cost of this honor. Soon, all that will remain of me is an echo, lost to the storm. But until that day, I fight.
Sí, dice que se van a terminar perdiendo en la tormenta de Sigmar a base de hacerse reforjas. Sí, sí, claro, y tiene defectos la reforja. Pero muy bien. Nada que no tenga en el libro ese que tengo ahí al lado, ¿sabes? En el Battle Tom. Pues muy bien. ¿Y qué?
It's official. Warhammer Age of Sigmar's new edition is here and is coming very, very soon. I'm joined by Ben and Phil and Matt from the AOC.
Los libros, los libros.
Age of Sigmar. Guys, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. First of all,
Tenemos un montón de papeles en la mesa.
I mean, come on, that thing is absolutely amazing. We were blown away by that. Let's talk about some of your top highlights from the cinematic trailer.
I mean, it was gobsmacking. The first time we saw it, we were like, what? It's just
Nada, JV, pero es que sí, muy bonito el tráiler, todo lo que quieras, muy buen videojuego, pero es que no han enseñado nada de lo nuevo, pero nada. Que es lo que ya a mí me pone en negro. Todo esto ya lo he visto, todas las armaduras que han sacado, te puedo decir una por una cuáles son. Hombre, a poco la peña. ¿A poco hay minis nuevas de Skaven?
The hour of ruin has dawned, right? It's a new era for Age of Sigmar. So we've just come out of the era of the Beast, very destruction focused. Chaos strikes back. We've seen the Skaven enter play in a great cataclysm called the Vermin Doom. That was the big explosion with all the stuff rising out of the ground. That's an entire nation of Skaven. It's not just a small area. Has gate crashed the party. A full third
Sí, pues van a reforjar la cámara la de los exploradores. Joder, nunca la cámara de vanguardia. Porque ese hipógrafo es de la cámara de vanguardia.
Nice. So you chatted a little bit about the Skaven there and sort of how the mortal realms have sort of been forged and stuff. So let's chat a little bit about the Skaven. What makes them so much more dangerous and so much more sort of horrifying in this new edition?
Well, we've seen the Skaven before. They're old friends, aren't they?
Voy a mirarlo.
We've all grown up with Skaven in a way. They're so Warhammer. What we're seeing now is not just a few of them creeping around in the sewers, but a real tidal wave of these things.
Es que hace que no le saco a mesa ese tipo de...
Giant rattling blaster for you know, the claw lord just failing. There's still that sense of humour to the Skaven and their kind of slightly charming cowardice.
Lo que hemos visto de los Storkas, hemos visto Prosecutors. Madre mía, no los voy a ver. A los grifopollos. Los Vanguard Paladors hemos visto. Ah, y dicen que esos son la cámara de la ruina. Pues muy bien.
Incredible warriors that can go into some of those really awful places in the middle round. You saw that, didn't you? The regular Stormcaster there, and there's bits of their armor coming away because they can't quite get in there. The guys from the Ruination Chamber, in they go. We are the guys to do that.
Yeah, that's almost the benefit they get from the. I mean,
The Ruination Chamber lo llaman, entonces. Pues bueno.
Like a blessing to be these big, strong heroes, and they've got all the kit, but really they're dying over and over again. That's not a good thing, and they're paying the price.
No, that was really one of my favorite things from the trailer. I think it's the first time we've, really been able to show that so clearly. Both the blessing of immortality, but as Phil said, the curse of immortality. Character that we see throughout the trailer, seeing that journey, both of, becoming more veteran and becoming more elite and a stronger warrior, but then, losing that aspect of the humanity, and ultimately, near the end of that journey, becoming kind of so.
Sí, pues como sean exactamente igual.
Having seen so many horrors and lived through so many horrors and so many deaths, that these are kind of some of the only people that can venture into this.
Son iguales, tío. Es que son exactamente iguales.
Let's chat a little bit about rules then as well. So what can players expect to experience with this new edition of Age of Sigmar?
O sea, que les pintas y dices, estos son de la ruina. Pues muy bien.
For Age of Sigmar since the very first edition came out. We really had three major goals in mind when we were doing that. The first was opening up the game to more players than ever. Really trying to make sure that the game was easy to learn, easy for new players to get into, yet retaining the tactical depth that makes it really difficult to master, where you can spend years and years playing and gaining that skill and that skill expression. The second thing was building on the interactivity in third edition, with more reactive commands and more opportunities for counter.
Dice que va a haber más opciones para reaccionar en el juego pasivo, ¿vale? Que solo estoy hablando con Alex en el grupo de WhatsApp, que pueden haber más contracargas, puede haber más movimientos fuera de fase para todos los ejércitos. Como una manera de mitigar el doble turno, que te puedan contracargar con una pantalla, por ejemplo.
So you guys were obviously heavily involved in the development of the new edition. One thing that I really want to know is what got yourselves and some of the playtesters most excited about this new edition?
There's a lot to chew over.
Yeah.
So the bit for me that I really love, I think it's a small change but it has huge impacts, is combat range. So weapon ranges have gone away, so for melee and everything now runs off combat range.
Vale, no tienen rango las armas de melee. O sea, el combate es como 40k.
And then also in combat, it just makes that combat phase so much slicker, so much quicker to play than it ever has before.
Yeah.
For me, I think you touched on it there, it is slicker, it's easier to play. And I'm big into telling a story on the battlefield and seeing, having those games which you talk about 10 years later. Yeah. And having the rules almost get out of the way to be able to do that. Yeah. And the way we've made these rules is so accessible and easy to use. We'll come to that in a minute. That it's far easier to see the ebb and flow of the battle and to do cool stuff on the battlefield. Yeah. It's really good fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really been kind of learning from all of the editions in the past. Through that work of making it more accessible, what we're really doing is trying to make it more elegant as a rule set, and looking for opportunities to really merge down without losing any of that tactical depth and any of that skill expression that comes with it.
And the flavor and the
flavor,
lore that comes through in these war
Se van a
scrolls.
centrar en las tácticas, por lo que están diciendo que son la esencia del juego.
No, and just our own lived experiences. The games that we've played, and we love the game and love the system. So this is really a culmination of that, and I couldn't be more excited to get it into players' hands.
That's great. So let's talk Spearhead as well, because this is a brand new way for players to play Age of Sigmar. Talk to us about that. What tell us everything about Spearhead that we need to know.
Gosh, everything. So Spearhead, it comes in the launch box. So everything you need to play Spearhead, the models, the board, the terrain, the cards, the rules for every faction as well are all included in the box. So you can play it straight out of the box on day one.
Vale, desde el día 1 van a estar disponibles todas las reglas de todos los ejércitos en la caja, desde día 1. Como los index, básicamente. Espero que lo esté traduciendo bien, porque a estas horas tela. Sí, efectivamente, Andrés, se confirman los index si no he escuchado mal y si no lo he traducido mal. Pero lo que no sé es si van a estar en la caja o los van a colgar en la web. Tengo mis dudas. Veamos que estén todas las reglas de todos los ejércitos desde el día 1 en la caja está muy bien.
So you've got this scenario where your normal Stormcaster trying to hold the line and hold back the enemy, and then pow, straight halfway through the battle, in comes Indrastir and her Annihilators to swing it back. So there's like an inbuilt story to that. There are choices you can make, so you can still give your guys different command traits or artifacts. You can give your army different ways to fight. And of course, the board is double-sided, so you've got Akshi side on one side if you want to fight in Akshi, fire and passion. On the other side is Gairan, which is much more lush vegetation, healing, cycle of life. And the cards that you pick up every turn will give you different objectives. Go there, kill that, get your dudes over that side. So there is an extremely large amount of ramifications of games you can play with Spearhead.
Must be so great for sort of experienced players to be able to get games in.
¿Qué dice? ¿Un nuevo modo de juego? ¿La punta de lanza?
And also great for like the tournament scene as well.
Curioso.
X amount of games in a certain amount of time. That must be great.
Yeah, it's been really interesting early on in the development of Spearhead.
Sí, efectivamente. Nuevo modo de juego. Como las Combat Patrol. Punta de lanza se va a llamar.
It ended up turning into a tournament over the weekend. They all got really into it and really competitive. And so this is something that we've seen really resonate with players. People gain a lot of excitement for it.
I think what's been fun from like an experience.
Sí, con las nuevas cajas de punta de lanza, Andrés.
And just because there's so few rules around their battle traits and there's so few war scrolls involved that you can just pick it up and play a game.
Como las Combat Patrol de 40k, básicamente.
What we're going to play with? Well, you know, I've not played with the Glimpse Gates for a while, so you take those off the shelf and you can have a game. And again, it's still around about an hour, even with something that's not played for a while.
Ay, qué pereza. Necesito un traductor, tío. Me voy a hacer un curso de inglés. Porque estoy oxidadísimo.
Because there's such kind of sweeping changes throughout the rule set, it was really the perfect opportunity to go back and revisit factions. We had some playtest games early on and some conversations early on where, it was a big kind of...
Dice que está testeando el juego XD.
Would never be less complex than the most complex faction, because you might either be playing with that faction or against that faction. And so, a lot of that same approach.
Les ponía a jugar yo 1000 partidas contra Serafón y que disfruten la fruta. Y no porque esté precisamente roto Serafón, sino porque es aburridísimo jugar contra él. Habilidades de armas. Eso suena a 40k. Como por ejemplo, autoherir al 6. Repetir para herir.
every single war scroll fits on a single-sided card with all of the information, kind of no matter how big the character, how powerful the character.
We've also done quite a
Las
lot
USR.
on stats and
Sí, las Universal Rules. Como en 40K están ahora. Me parece muy acertado el formato. Y que todas las reglas estén en el core. Todas y cada una de ellas.
look at the battlefield and you can see what sort of armor type should this unit have,
Gran
what
acierto.
health should this unit have. So it's all a lot more consistent now.
I think one of my favorite parts of that is that the color
Qué pena que no esté Alex, macho. Se la estaría gozando ahora mismo, Alex, escuchando esto.
and each ability has a color to go with it to tell you what phase you use that
O Juanvi
ability in.
también.
So you're not having to go through all of your rules all the time. You just
We've all
look
played that
for
game
it.
where we've forgotten one, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
could have done that, yeah.
And that's just really easy way to pass the rules and to know what you can do at certain times.
We've really tried to look from a lore perspective, from a miniatures perspective, from a rules perspective. One of our main tenets of the game is that the rules reflect the mortal realms, right? And so we think the game works best when all three of those things are working in concert. Where
Un modo de juego más rápido todavía.
it's really the first time we've been able to go back and really differentiate the different races, the different units, the different factions.
Mierda.
And give them much
Uf.
more of an identity through the
Digo, se me corta internet y nos morimos aquí.
Free to access on launch, right?
Yeah, that's right. So there's digital versions of them available at launch, and there's also card versions of them as well, so you can have them laid out in your gaming table.
Also, we've got updated rules for all of the armies of renown, regiments of renown, content from the Dawnbringer series that you've been playing through, all updated for the new edition.
Everybody gets something new and cool to look
Vale, que los ejércitos de renombre y todo esto los van a actualizar para la nueva edición de Sigmar.
So much. Well, Ben, Phil, Matt, thank you so much for joining us and coming into the studio to chat a little bit about Age of Sigmar. We cannot wait for it.
O sea que aprovechar las roturas, chicos.
Well, that's all we've got time for. What a show and what a series of announcements. Thank you to Adepticon for having us, and thank you to you for being with us. We hope you've enjoyed it just as much as we have. Remember, you can head to the Warhammer community website if you'd like to find out more about any of the upcoming releases. And don't forget to follow us on all
Pues
our
ala.
socials to keep up to date with all the latest news. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Gracias a vosotros, chicos, que vamos. Si no es por vosotros aquí, no me daba a mí un algo. Bueno, yo soy Noah y se corta aquí la retransmisión. Un saludo y hasta pronto. Chao.